Welcome back, Mistakes listeners. This is Dave, and I'm very, very glad to have you back. This week we talked about Star Wars, The Force Awakens, and the Seahawks. Yes, two great tastes that go together. Pretty much kind of like Todd and I. Anyway, we recorded this episode on January 10th, 2016. This would happen to be episode 46, and as you know, you can follow us on Twitter at Parent Mistakes. And you can also follow us on Facebook at Parenting Mistakes. Hey, once again, glad to have you, and sit back and enjoy the show.
So you didn't watch the big game?
No, I didn't watch the big game, and I know it was today, but, well, you know my history, right? Does everybody else know my history? I don't think they do.
So, folks, if we have not, well, we've talked about this a little bit.
Oh man,
in the
yeah,
past.
this is true, and but I've never really expressed my opinions about how I feel about this particular topic.
Okay, so I'm Todd, that's Dave. We have been friends since junior high.
Mm-hmm.
We have a number of common interests. And
we do.
And we had a lot of fun together in high school. Never seemed to, run out of things to do. But we also have individual interests.
Mm-hmm.
As in, I'm a big sports guy, and you can't see this on the podcast right now, because you can't, because it's a podcast.
Right. Well, but it's so, yeah.
But I'm wearing, Dave's laughing at me now, I am wearing a Seattle Seahawks jersey.
Right.
We are both from Seattle. Dave still lives there. I live in Los Angeles.
Best city in the world. Best city in the world.
But I am loyal to my teams.
Which is good.
Yeah. So today there was a playoff game, and the Seahawks beat the Vikings. Sorry for any of our listeners who might be in Minnesota right now.
Well, from what I understand, there was a mix-up or some sort of screw-up on the behalf of the Vikings.
Yes, the Vikings really should have won this game.
Right.
They had a game-winning. Well, okay, even though you're not a sports guy.
No, I picked it up because you told me to pick it up. You're like, hey,
I know.
Here's how ignorant I was of the situation, Todd, when you said, hey, I said, let's start the show, and then you're like, hey, go turn on the TV. I thought you actually literally meant that some horrible terrorist attack had happened.
No.
That's how ignorant I was of what was happening at that moment.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Ace Ventura, Pet Detective?
Yeah?
Seen that movie?
I have not.
You have not?
I'm sorry, I haven't.
Okay,
I've seen lots of YouTube.
Come on, Jim Carrey. I would think you would have seen this.
I am so sorry, I have not. I saw The
then
Mask. I saw Dumb and Dumber.
For the people that are listening, I will just say laces out, Dan, and you will understand that reference if you've seen the movie, because that's actually what happened in the game. Anyway,
you're making it sound like we have nothing in common, Todd.
No, we do. We have lots in common. Anyway, so I was thinking about this because you were telling me in the pre-show about the few times you've actually turned the game on.
Right. So what Todd hasn't told you is I don't like sports. I hate when people have asked me, I usually just say outright I hate sports, and that's not exactly true because I did participate in some sports. I've made jokes saying that if I became president of the world, the first thing I would do is eliminate all sports.
Wow.
I've got so I'm a pop culture nerd. A huge pop culture nerd, and so being that, my origins lie with Star Trek.
Yes.
And I had no interest in sports. I stink at sports. I'm terrible at them. And Star Trek was always basically Star Trek reruns, the original series, like the authentic, pure white wine that was the original Star Trek.
Oh, brother.
Was always delayed or not shown if a baseball game went over. Which just torqued me off to
Here comes the bitterness.
End. I thanked my lucky stars that Next Gen was always on Saturday night at 7. Because there was never a sporting event at that time. I never had to worry about the violation.
Okay.
Right?
Well, it's a good thing you're not watching it now because oftentimes, particularly in the fall, there are football games on Saturday nights.
Thank goodness to the internet. Star Trek is never touched anymore, right?
That's right.
Heck, I can watch Star Trek anytime I want. You know, if there's a sporting event happen, I can just turn it off and watch Star Trek. I can delay the sport. I can do the reverse. It's the future.
So you were talking about earlier, you turned on a Seahawks game.
So yeah, all that to say, my daughters know nothing because usually, and this is weird too. Sports families, I had to say that, and I know this is okay. You had to help me here. It always seems to me that there is a sports fanatic in the family, be it the wife or the husband, who is the main draw or the vortex towards the sport. And whoever that sports vortex is everybody else is drawn into that. Kids, we're watching baseball, we're watching football, and we're all going to be doing this together. And because there is no vortex in me or my wife, they know nothing about sports. They're not drawn into it whatsoever. So, honestly, they're sports virgins. They just don't know anything about anything.
And in my family, my wife is also a sports fan.
Right.
She will watch certain sports, not all of them. She's not just a sports nut, but certain sports she would watch if I wasn't there. She
Right.
has T-shirts. We have flags for respective schools. Yeah, whole 9 yards.
She would probably, what you're saying is if you guys weren't married, she'd probably watch sports on her own.
Well, all 5 of us were watching this game today.
Sure.
Yeah.
And my
we were all
daughters
jumping
have a
down.
hard time figuring out what a football is compared to a basketball. They don't know the difference.
Okay, so this is going to be our not so awkward segue. So you were telling me a story about how you turned on a particular football game, and if you're a Seahawks fan, I will just say
yeah. So our city, the city of Seattle, they're the number one fans on the planet Earth, and this I do know. Like they're another more dedicated, rowdy fans, crazier fans than Seahawks fans, and our city is sucked into that vortex, so it's unavoidable. You
well, it
cannot
also
avoid
it helps that they've been really good for the last couple of years.
Oh, dude, I knew the Seahawks won. The only reason I knew they won is because we have fireworks displays go off here. Massive fireworks, booming explosions that go off all over the city.
Okay, so you turned on a game a couple years ago.
A couple years ago. Yep.
This was the NFC Championship game.
That
This
is
is the
correct.
game that ushered the Seahawks into the Super Bowl when they won the Super Bowl.
So my girls are asking, who are the Seahawks? And I say to them, I was trying to be very open, not bitter. I said, the Seahawks are the heroes of Seattle.
The heroes.
They are the heroes of Seattle. People see them as Supermen.
Certainly.
Of Seattle.
And there are people that look up to sports figures. Plenty of people that look up to sports figures.
Yes.
Okay. But as you were sharing with me, you turned on a game that is a famous game for Seahawks fans. And
Yes.
after this game, after they won,
We opened up the last 10 minutes of this particular, what do you want to call it? Game. I was going to call it an episode.
right. And Richard Sherman gets on TV
And I'm like, kids, these are the Seahawks. Literally.
These are the Seahawks.
Kids, these are the Seahawks.
And Richard Sherman does one of probably the more famous rants.
They won the game. I'm like,
television
girls,
sports
they
history.
won the game. They're the heroes. And we get
Yes.
this. What's
Yes,
the rant?
He basically was dissing an offensive player on the San Francisco 49ers.
All
basically,
I know was
basically dancing on his grave.
yes. He was being the proverbial behind
Yes.
as a
Little-
hero of Seattle.
And I love me some Richard Sherman, but yeah, he certainly is and he's a very bright guy and he's a good guy, but yeah.
And they spent weeks telling you that after that. He's
Yeah.
brilliant, he's smart, blah, 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 right?
Oh, he is, yeah.
Right, sure.
All
His
right.
mom loves him. That was another thing. His mom stands behind him. I'm like,
So, here's our awkward segue. Heroes.
heroes.
Yes, sports heroes. One type of flawed character that we look up to.
Well, we gotta close the circle here.
What?
We haven't watched football since. After that little thing, like,
Okay.
well, we're gonna let this little sliver of football into our house? Done.
Right. And for other people, that is exactly what they love about a player like that.
Yeah,
They don't want a
this
guy
is true.
that's going to come out and be humble and say, oh, yeah, the other team, they played really well. Credit to them. They want a guy that's going to come out and go, you know what?
Yeah, that Bing Bing did the Bing Bing Bing.
Yeah.
Right? Sorry, girls. I'm like literally putting my hands in their ears. Oh. Yeah.
So dare I say
yes.
that in real life, there are people such as sports heroes that can walk both sides of the light side or the dark side of their personalities.
It's a terrible transition.
No,
What
it's not.
here's the transition.
Fantastic. It's fantastic.
Sports
transition.
heroes, pop culture heroes.
Okay.
Because these are Dave's heroes.
Dave's
These
hero.
are the ones that I grew up in the door,
Yes.
and they're back. Right?
They are.
And they don't say horrible things, right?
Well, they have some terrible lines, but
Oh, like, oh look, I'm C-3PO and my arm is red, but you
Yes.
probably don't know why.
all right. So this week we went a little bit off our normal script. We've done a lot of TV shows. We've done one other movie. Yes, we did.
We did Inside Out.
Okay. So we decided, just because of the mayhem, and yeah, we decided to do Star Wars.
We're doing Star Wars because it is directly targeted at children. It sits right in our wheelhouse. Because you want to know? Because I'll say that because the majority of the Gen X generation has grown up with this thing since we were about 6 or 7 or 8 years old.
Yes.
As sort of a pop culture religion.
Yes. It is a almost 40-year journey.
Yep.
Of story and characters and merchandising.
And for parents, this is your opportunity now to pass that torch off to your child.
Oh, boy.
Right? And sorry, millennials, you ended up with the prequels. Ha ha ha. Right?
They did get the Avengers. That was pretty fun.
They did.
All right, so I'm not going to go through the whole synopsis of this because it's a whole movie, that sort of thing. But suffice
we're not
it
into
to say,
spoilers. I was thinking about the same thing, too. I'm like, we need to come at this from a parenting mistakes perspective, which is, hey.
I don't think we can discuss this. I think we're just going to say right now. Everybody just put a comma in right now. Spoiler alert. Okay?
Well,
It's
yeah,
just
right.
Spoiler alert
Yeah,
for the next however many minutes.
I don't even think it's necessary to talk about spoilers, to be honest with you.
Well,
From
I
our
know, but
analysis
people are sensitive about that.
I
still ran into somebody this weekend that was like,
right. They
I haven't
seen
seen Star Wars yet, and someone ruined it for me.
Yeah, no, and I actually had that experience this morning as well. Someone approached me and said, "Hey, what this happened, Mr. Pop Culture person? I'm so sorry, right? You know, I wish I could undo your memory."
All right, so Star Wars is it's really hard for me to say this, but there are people out there that have not seen Star Wars, like any of it.
That's true.
They still exist.
Yes.
Sort of fuddles me.
No. My girls haven't seen it.
Well, I understand that. I'm not talking just younger. I'm just saying people my age. People our age.
They still haven't seen
it. Oh,
it.
yeah, I never watched any of the Star Wars movies. No, really, that. I think I watched part of one and I fell asleep. And I'm like, what?
Right.
Is that possible?
Right.
So Star Wars is a space opera. It is in space. And it is a ongoing battle between the dark side and the light side. Yeah. It is the Empire against the Rebellion. Mm-hmm. It has many twists and turns of politics and religion, and there are spaceships and blasters and characters, and that's just a horrible summary. But
no, it's pretty accurate. And it's pretty much what we said for our Clone Wars episode as well.
So originally Star Wars came out in 1977, Episode 4. At the time, it wasn't called Episode 4, but they did Episodes 4, 5, and 6. And then they went back and they did Episodes 1, 2, and 3 to tell us the story that led up to Episode 4, which is fine. And now they're doing Episode 7. And what they did in this movie was they sort of did a transition from the classic characters, the classic heroes that we grew up with, to a new generation of heroes. Now, the classic heroes are still going to be involved, at least we assume they are, but the focal point is on new heroes. So, I guess here's the crux of the matter, and part of the reason that we're talking about this is, I know you liked the movie.
Well, I haven't claimed either or. I have not said. Nope, right. I have not stood firm on whether I like or dislike the film.
All right.
Because I don't want to be on that sinking ship when the rest of the planet decides this is another stinker. right?
I think
Because
they are, do you?
well, a little of my history is I walked out of the Phantom Menace, so episode 1, probably the most outside of the Star Wars Christmas special, the most horrendous Star Wars there is, right? And I liked
Talking
it.
about that Christmas
I
special was amazing.
I watched it recently, actually.
Did
But
you really?
oh, I did. I love it because it's so weird. It's
Oh
so
yeah.
weird. And sometimes just hits that little itch that you have, like,
Oh yeah.
just how could this go so possibly wrong? Um, but I walked out of the Phantom Menace saying, I love this movie. I really liked it. And suddenly I found myself on a very, very lonely island, shamed and befuddled and feeling, I don't want to say stupid, but I did like it. I liked it. And then everybody else on the entire planet told me this is probably one of the worst movies ever made.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, it's probably not the worst movie ever made. The
Probably
problem
not.
is that it's the worst movie ever made because of expectation.
Yes.
And this movie is getting vaulted so high because it's the redemption film.
Right.
This is the thing that's supposed to bring us all back to Star Wars, folks.
Right.
Here's this vortex, and I'm like, man, I've got to see this thing a couple more times and get away from all this sheen before I can really go, yeah. Because to be honest with you, Todd, there's a part in the movie, there's like a center part of the movie where it kind of slows down. And I'm like, it's dragging for some reason. I don't know why. I couldn't tell you exactly why I was dragging, but I remember going, and it wasn't like I was looking at my watch, because it's Star Wars, I'm glued to the thing, but I'm like, something isn't working out right in the script here, and it's kind of going off kilter. But then it would just pick up.
Okay. So let's fast forward a little bit. Let's think about this again from a parenting standpoint.
Right.
Okay.
And that's what I'm trying to emphasize here. It is the Star Wars vortex, and everybody's saying right now on the internet, this is the redemptive Star Wars that's brought us out of the prequels into the new Star Wars era, and also the new Star Wars marketing machine.
Right. Okay. So let's ask the really important question for parents. Who is this appropriate for?
Well, okay, to be honest with you, between you and I and the rest of the planet here, I think it's marketed for Gen Xers. Our generation. I think specifically
40-somethings.
For 40-somethings, for that group that was so unabashedly hurt by the prequels that this almost starts off right off the bat by saying, this is for you guys.
It is a PG-13 movie. That's something that people have to realize, and I think people forget that sometimes. Because 5 of the 7 Star Wars movies have been PG. Episode 3 was PG-13, and now this is PG-13, which we've talked about this a little bit before. PG-13 is sort of the sweet spot for the movie industry.
Now it is. Yep.
Yeah, because if it's R, then you're going to lose the kid audience. If it's PG, you lose the adult audience. So PG-13 makes it feel just edgy enough for the adults and just risque enough for the, say, preteens.
Yep.
Who will have their parents take them.
So I would say immediately off the bat, the tone never really switches, and it starts off with an invasion on a planet where basically the stormtroopers do a number of horrendous things to innocent civilians.
Yeah.
Right?
Kill everybody.
They do, and they do it right there on the screen.
Yep.
Yep, there's blood. In fact, I don't recall ever seeing, this is going to sound strange, there's a little bit of blood in New Hope, but there's a lot of blood in this movie. More than I thought in a typical Star Wars film, with the exception of probably Anakin being destroyed on Mustafar, right? Which he's just a pulpy, weird thing.
Well, it's the first time that we've seen blood sort of like smeared on somebody,
right? Yeah,
which is a little more graphic when all of a sudden someone takes blood and just sort of rubs it on your face. I mean, that's a little more stark.
Yep, and it's just there. It's for all the world to see. And I think it's also setting a tone. Not only is it pointing out which stormtrooper you should be rooting for, because I saw that as a writer's help, but also it's basically setting a tone that this is not this quote-unquote George Lucas is really targeting this movie for your kids.
Yeah, and yet all of the marketing and merchandise is still targeted. I mean, the volume of action figures and other toys and games is crazy. Yeah. So this is where we get into a really tough area from a parenting standpoint, because can you say, okay, let's say your kid is 8. Are you going to buy them all the action figures and then say, oh, by the way, you can't see the movie for several years? Or are you going to say, you know, I saw Star Wars when I was a kid and it wasn't that bad and there's not a lot of blood, so sure. I mean, the parent will sort of say to themselves, okay, I'm guiding my child. Because that's what the rating says. Parental guidance suggested.
Right. And I think the other term that I've heard in the media blitz is that, oh, this gets back to that grand space adventure that we've been dying to have for so long. You know what I'm saying? So it's not just... So again, Star Wars is so weird in that it's almost at the level of religion.
Right.
Like, and part of that pop culture heart is suggesting that there's a part of Star Wars that is real. There are people that really do buy into this light side, dark side thing.
Well,
and
sure.
you know, this is a part of their lives, and a part of the zeitgeist is all about that. So the thing here is that JJ had to appeal to those folks, but at the same time he wanted to get back to that space adventure. Well, did I really feel like it was a grandiose space adventure? You know what, to me, this is going to sound really weird and come out in a left field. You know what was a grandiose space adventure to me when I was a kid? Ice Pirates.
Oh.
I'm telling you, man.
Terrible movie.
But it is, but it's just this... It's wacky, it's crazy, it's off the wall, a bunch of space pirates trying to get water from Earth, and...
Okay, so I have one other question, one other topic about this, because this is something I've actually debated with my youngest daughter, is what is it that we are hesitant about with this type of a film? What specifically? In other words, it's definitively violent.
Yes.
There is death, there is fighting throughout.
Yep.
Okay. There is no sensuality, I would say.
I have to watch it again.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. If you can't come up with anything off the top of your head,
Yeah.
there definitely wasn't anything where it's really obvious.
Yeah, it wasn't like Return of the Jedi where suddenly Leia's in her outfit.
Princess Leia and the gold bikini and that sort of
Yep.
thing. Yeah, there's zero sensuality. There is, if I remember correctly, zero like sexual innuendo, and the language is fine. I don't remember there being.
There's one S word. Han Solo says it.
Does he?
He literally says it, yes.
Okay.
Because it's Han Solo, and I'm like,
Of
oh, he
course.
just used the S word because
Yeah.
we're edgy, right?
That's
And
right,
even
we're edgy.
Star
It's
Wars is more
PG-13.
edgy, but yes, he
Yeah.
uses the S word.
Okay, so it's really all about the violence. So I mean, I've thought about this too. What is it about? What kind of violence is? And again, it's a loose term to say it's okay for kids versus, we've talked about cartoonish violence or implied violence. I mean, we talked about before. Yeah, opening scene, the bad guys show up. There's a confrontation, and then they kill a bunch of innocent people. We don't see it.
Oh, you kind of see it. The stormtroopers are
Well,
all lined up against a wall of just
Right,
bodies
right.
falling down.
Right, but it's not like, the opening scene for Saving Private Ryan.
Oh, no.
Where we're seeing like
Right, yeah.
somebody's intestines bursting out of their
Right.
chest. And
No,
stuff
it's
like
not like that, no.
Most of it is implied,
Mhm.
and it's behind the scenes, and it's shadowy, and it's in the dark, and we don't see the gruesome details. So, I don't know. I mean, I don't really have an easy answer for that, but that's something I think that parents really struggle with, because they sort of say, okay, is it, when somebody actually does die and you see them die? Or is it the presence of blood? Or is it dismemberment? Or is it somebody that's dying and we hear aspects of the agony of them dying? That sort of thing. That's a tough one.
Well, I think we have to redefine really what adventure means or space adventure means, in that when you think of adventure, you're thinking that at some point you're going to have to use your guns, use your fists, you're going to have to fight your way out of a certain situation, and your life is going to be in jeopardy in some fashion or form. If there's no risk, there's no win. There's no
True.
classic adventure. One of the best Star Trek quotes that I ever heard was from a Star Trek fan in the 70s who basically said, Yeah, so Star Trek talks about a future that is all about peace, where we have obliterated poverty. They don't. There's usually a peaceable outcome to any solution, but the reality is almost in every single episode of Star Trek, Captain Kirk was either fighting, pulling out a phaser, or shooting the Klingons. The Klingons show up in, I think, like 4 or 5 episodes. But whatever enemy was there, by the end of the episode, Kirk had a ripped shirt because he's fighting his way out, right?
Right.
And I'm like, in a show that quote-unquote is talking about the peace and wonderment of the future. You can't have that without violence, is what it's suggesting.
Okay.
And I'm like, and this is what the overlay is. Can you have Star Wars without violence? Can you have Star Wars without that galactic lightsaber scene where there's just a lot of brutality? Because one of the characters gets totally ripped up by a lightsaber, right? And you're like, well, it's part of the adventure. It's part of the scope of the film, right? And is it for kids? As an adult, does it get my blood rushing? Yeah. I find it interesting. It makes me sound awful. I love violence. Here's my soup of pop culture fun, and woo.
Right, but all the way back to our original question of heroes, and would we rather our heroes at the end of the football game or the lightsaber battle say, you know what, you win. I bow to your greatness. Good fighting. Good guys win.
Okay.
As opposed to slinking off or a massive rant or something like that.
Please forgive me.
Oh dear.
Okay, but I will say there might be an alternative to this solution or this problem, and that is a Russell Wilson quote, which was at the end of the time they went after the Super Bowl #2.
Okay.
The second time they lost at it. And it was pretty clear the Seahawks had made a couple of mistakes, and Russell Wilson got up in front of the crowd and basically said, I will not let this moment define me. It's not a defeatist moment, right? But at the same time, it's like saying, I grew from this, but it's not going to be how I'm defined. I'm going to keep on pushing on, right? What kind of statement that is? It's a pretty benign, pretty good statement. In fact, it was a statement that was used in our church quite a bit, right? We had a number of pastors quote that. I'm not going to be defined by this. I'm looking towards the future, right? Okay. It's a good quote, right? That's not really the message we got from Star Wars.
Right.
Right? And here's another deal. I'm not exactly sure where I'm going with this.
No, but I understand. I understand the general idea. There's always a sense of we're going to keep fighting.
Right.
And there always has to be fighting. So I think, as a summary, I would say, parents with this movie, be cautious. We've talked about this before, that our sentimentality as parents can sometimes skew how we make choices for our children because we have a nostalgic attachment to something from the past.
Thank you for reeling me in, because that's exactly what we're going for here.
We grew up on Star Wars. We loved it. We played it on the playground. We had all the action figures. And we look at ourselves and we say, hey, we turned out okay. We turned out, being fairly, balanced, decent people. We're not all hell-bent on violence all the time. We're not running around with lightsabers trying to kill everybody when we have a conflict in the office. And so, maybe it'll be okay for my kid to go watch a little bit of, silly, made-up sci-fi movie stuff. But, there is definitely a dark elements to the film. There are characters that are a little scary for kids, and just got to be cautious.
Dude, it is a cautionary tale, because in essence, if they watch this movie at, say again, we've talked about this before, the type of kid, but if a kid gets in there and he really wants to live out the Kylo Ren or Darth Vader fantasy, our society right now gives you every bit of tool to make that happen.
Right.
You can dress up as this person, you can get their lightsaber, you can actually talk like them if you want, and then you can clearly go after all those actions if you want as well. Like, I can just totally roleplay this. And I'm like, I hate to sound like a fuddy-duddy, but those tools were not there for me at the time, and I would just have to kind of imagine stuff on my own, right? I didn't have all these accessories. In fact, if kids want to, they can go on YouTube and actually see how they can perfect their Darth Vader.
Right.
This is how you do it better.
And my wife made an interesting observation. She said that she feels like now, almost 40 years later, the Darth Vader character from the original is almost shifted in terms of he's almost a sympathetic character.
Oh, yeah.
In some cases. And while, when you and I were growing up, he was the definitive go-to stereotype cliche bad guy.
Oh, yeah.
And I threw him in the same box with Hitler and Genghis Khan and, all the bad guys. You're just like Darth Vader's just bam, he's right there. He's just pure evil.
He is.
But I did, we could, I don't want to get on a long discussion, but we could have a long discussion about, sort of the message to kids about the Kylo Ren character, because he really does, he even talks about sort of his struggles.
Yeah.
Sort of this sense of, hey, I know I'm supposed to do certain things in life, and I don't know if I want to do them. I kind of want to go down this path. And that's a very realistic thing, I think, for both kids and adults to sort of say, who do we look up to? Should we look up to the people? We should look up to people that are boring, right? We should look up to the teachers and the doctors and the firefighters who just kind of do their job every day and don't complain about it and just help everybody, right? Mm-hmm. But that's boring. We want to look up to people that are a little flashier.
Well, that's a great point too, Todd. I mean, there's a lot of meat and discussion to have in here, in that not only that, but we as a society have evolved it up to even a higher level of we put Darth Vader up there versus Barack Obama, right? We have these new myths and legends that we can totally latch onto that don't exist, but we can have them become our heroes.
Yep.
And our society will totally help you do that. And I'm like, to be honest with you, Todd, it's kind of a bummer. It is. It's kind of a bummer, right? I wish it wasn't that way. And I get sucked into it too. I do. Yep. I like the Marvel franchise. I like all the things that are happening there, and I like looking at superheroes.
Yes.
But there's not a single one of them that will look at me and love me back.
True.
Right?
Or that won't let you down at some point.
Totally. They're always going to let me up.
Yep.
So, let's just be really clear about this. I can't recommend this movie for kids. I can't with a good conscience say, hey, I'm going to take my 6-year-old and 4-year-old to see Star Wars and feel good about it. I think it would be a bit much for them. I think they would like, But I'm looking to you as the elder parent. as the what age group do you think should be seeing this film and kind of enjoying it and having a good time?
So Meg, my youngest, is 11, and we let her see it.
Okay.
Yeah, she would say she's 11 and a half.
Sure.
But she's pretty mature for her age. Mm-hmm. She's read a lot of literature, like adult literature and that sort of thing. I guess what I would say is, if you're going to take a kid that's a little younger than the 13, know why you're taking them. Don't do it because, and this is with any media, don't do it to avoid the kid getting upset. Because you're the parent. Mm-hmm. You have to make decisions sometimes that are going to be unpopular with your kids. And even if the kid says, everyone in my class has seen it, you get to see it, how come so and so saw it, that sort of thing. That's very powerful for some parents, but you have to be the adult and sort of say, well, that's their house. That's right. Their parents' decision. And it does make you think about, and this is for a variety of things, it does make you think about how you articulate certain things to your kids. Do you just say, well, because I'm the parent and I don't feel like arguing with you? That's your right. I've done that on occasion, not for usually big stuff, but just if a kid just keeps bugging me about something, I'm like, because we're not going to. That's it. I'm not going to take the time and the energy to explain it to you right now because you won't buy it anyway. So.
Whoosh, wow.
Heavy. On that note, you can follow us on Twitter, Parent Mistakes, and on Facebook, Parenting Mistakes. And next week, Dave.
Yeah.
The Seahawks are playing again.
Yeah.
Another opportunity for our heroes to make us proud or let us down.
I'll just listen for the fireworks.
I'll let you know how the game goes. How about that?
That'd be nice.
All right. With that.